Are we, oh yeah, 7:31. Dunya, thank you. All right, we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting of October 16th, Board of Adjustment to order. It is exactly 6:32. And if everyone will rise, and I'll put Miss Cassandra on the spot.
All righty.
Lead us in the pledge.
Oh, it's over here now.
Why you guys looking at me?
Why'd you trick us?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I know. And may we have a roll call of the board members, since we've got new ones, especially.
Rosaline Philippi,
Philippe.
sorry.
It's okay. Here.
Holly Cohen, Michael McDermott, Cassandra Arnold,
Present.
Lumana Joseph,
Present.
Nikisha Williams. We have quorum.
Thank you. And now for the announcement to the audience.
Madam
ahead.
Chair, so, hopefully this is working. So there's two housekeeping matters that need to be taken care of before we proceed with the meeting.
Okay,
The first is to make sure everybody has submitted paperwork and is sworn in, and then an election of officers, since technically this is the first meeting of the
Okay.
year, which should have happened back in June, but has been rolled over.
and then also I saw that there's the orientation. Are we gonna
Yeah.
put that
W-
towards the end, because we don't want our, applicant to have to stay here?
That's fine. And we don't necessarily need to go through a formal presentation at this point. We can have a discussion,
Okay,
Awesome.
okay?
wonderful.
Great.
Okay, so, Mr. Cook, why don't you inquire about paperwork and,
So, if I may, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
Did everyone receive their paperwork through the city clerk's office?
Yes.
And did you fill it out and return it to the city clerk?
Yes.
Yes, we
Did
did.
anyone get sworn in by the city clerk?
No, I got a welcome letter.
Okay.
Email.
okay.
All right.
So, Ms. Williams, you have paperwork
I do have paperwork.
with you.
I have paperwork with me.
Why don't you turn it in to Mr. Cook?
Okay.
Forgive us as we go through this housekeeping, sorry. Let's see if we have this in here. So they do have an oath of office. Let's see.
So, question for the board members who submitted their paperwork. There's an oath of office that was supposed to be, I guess, notarized.
Yes,
Did you all notarize and submit that?
I did.
No.
Yes, ma'am?
I have mine here,
Uh-huh.
which I can fill out, and if we have a notary.
Well, why don't we do this? I will read the oath, and you swear or affirm your agreement to it. And following the meeting, we will redo that with the formal exercise with the city clerk's office.
Perfect.
Okay, and then we'll
Let me ask you a
proceed.
question.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
ones who did submit it, the formal exercise at the end, does that still need to be done?
Are we talking about the ethics portion?
No, that part.
Oh,
You was
the-
talking
I
about
don't
the
even
oath part.
remember.
Does it
The,
matter?
yes, it should, yes.
Okay.
So to be clear, and forgive me, Mr. Hill, it was of our thinking that you would need officially also have the city clerk swear you in along with us.
Right, so we are going to
Oh, okay.
This is all new.
do it
Okay.
on,
Okay.
on the clerk's behalf, and
And I
then
don't
you'll
remember
do it again with the clerk, either
Oh,
at your convenience, or we'll arrange for that to happen at the next meeting.
interesting,
Okay.
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 I
And
Madam Chair?
I don't remember if I had, because I submitted what I submitted.
that's okay.
to your
We're,
office.
we're fine.
Okay.
We're gonna
So either way
proceed.
it goes, we still gotta do
Okay.
one with the city clerk.
Okay.
So everybody raise your right hand. I state your name.
I,
Cassandra
Rosalind
Rosalind
Philippe,
A resident of the state of Florida, of the United States of America, and of the city of North Miami, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Florida, observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the city of North Miami, and will faithfully perform the duties of Board of Adjustment, so help me God. Please say yes.
I do,
I do.
I do,
Yes, I
yes.
Thank you. You're all sworn in.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
All right.
You're welcome. So now we can do the announcement of the public hearing process, if that's okay with the chair.
No, go ahead.
Oh. The election.
the
I'm
election.
sorry. Chair and vice chair. Yes, sir.
Awesome. I second.
Thank you. Thank you. I accept. I'll make sure I'm here
Well,
every
there should
meeting.
be a
Yes, so there's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor.
Seconded by Ms. Arnold?
Yes,
Okay.
seconded by Ms. Arnold. Ms. Philippe, how do you,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Ms. Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Joseph,
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Motion has been passed, 5-0.
Okay, great. So with that,
And now a second motion for vice chair.
second motion. Is Holly on? Is she?
And the
She's
second
on the
motion,
board.
and the second motion on the floor is for vice chair. Ms. Philippe?
Well, nobody's made
Oh.
it yet.
Okay. I make the motion for vice chair, Mr. McDermott.
I second that
Okay.
Okay.
all day.
All day. All right. So it's been moved by myself, okay, and seconded by Ms.
Ms.
Arnold.
Okay, and Ms. Philippe?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Ms. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Motion has been passed, 5-0.
Great. Now we can actually work.
Okay. So this is the quasi-judicial announcement. Please be advised that the following items on the agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. The applicant or duly authorized agent for the applicant must be present. If no representative is present, the application will be tabled to the next Board of Adjustment meeting. When the petition is announced, the applicant or his or her agent shall approach the microphone and state his or her name and address for the record. Any interested party wishing to speak on any item may approach the podium after the board has opened the public hearing. Each party shall approach the microphone and state his or her name and address for the record, and shall address his or her comments to the board. Each party shall speak for not more than 3 minutes in order to provide for order and time for other interested parties to address their concerns and comments to the board.
All right. We're good?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on with the oath.
Yes.
I think there's only one person.
Anybody who's going to be speaking to the Board of Adjustment today, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you.
Any amendments to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna take the Board of Adjustment's orientation training and put
Move
it at
it
the end of
to
the
the end.
agenda.
All right. That sounds good. Communications from board members? None? Okay. All right. So with that, I think I skip approval of minutes for those of us who are here. But go ahead. Moved by Mr. McDermott, seconded by Ms. Arnold. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, so we will, I know we have no continued petition, so we'll do the new one, which is V-13-19, special exception use, and that is, excuse me a second. 1300, 13000 Biscayne Boulevard. Is the applicant, okay, they're there. Okay, Mr. Cook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated, this is an application for a special exception to allow for a drive-through at the property generally located at 13,000 Biscayne Boulevard. And you have to excuse me as I get oriented. We have changed our system up here for the PowerPoint. And I have not used this. Okay.
Fancy
It
equipment.
looks to be working. We're good. So as stated, this is item number 5-1319, a McDonald's drive-through, special exception. As stated, this is at 13,000 Biscayne Boulevard. It is within the C-2 BW zoning district. The property is approximately 19,820 square feet. The application is for a review of a special exception. As you can see here in the picture, the property is located at the corner of a drive-through service road. I believe that is probably 130, Northeast 130th. That is on the north side and the corner of Biscayne Boulevard. This property is in the shopping center of the Publix, which you know have several commercial uses within that shopping center. As you can see, all the properties that are located around this property is also zoned for commercial uses. This is a picture of the property as it is today. This is looking from the northeast from Biscayne Boulevard. This is looking from the southwest. This is looking from the south, looking northward on the east side of the property. As you can see there are numerous parking spaces there. With the redesign of the item, as you would see on the site plan, these parking spaces have been eliminated to accommodate the drive-through and to allow for exit lane on the property. This is looking from the north southward. This is how the drive-through is oriented as you go from the south, moving north around the building, and you go around, and it comes, as you would see with the new site plan, there will be 2 lanes, where it's 1 lane now. These are the new elevations for the property. This is looking at the south elevation and the east elevation. Pretty austere. From the north elevation and the west elevation. As was stated, as you look at the site plan, you can see the new orientation of the drive-through. As was stated earlier, it is currently a 1-lane drive-through. The applicant is proposing to do some modifications to the site as a whole. As stated earlier, you have some parking spaces that were to the east of the property abutting Biscayne Boulevard would be eliminated. You will have the introduction of additional drive-through lane and the introduction of a bypass lane to allow for any traffic who may not want to get in the lane, they want to get out and go on out of the property to the north. So we have several items that we look at in our consideration for the review of the special exception. As stated here, you will see these items are, number 1, is the use of listed a special exception in the district where the property is located. Yes, within the code, to have a drive-through within the city, you require a special exception in any location that is allowed under the zoning. Is there appropriate provisions of access facilities adequate for the estimated traffic from public streets and sidewalks so as to assure the public safety and avoid traffic congestion? So this is an existing site. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. This McDonald's has been there for many years. So I believe with this new orientation to the site, it actually would improve the traffic flow. And it's not illustrated in the site plan, but you have, the parking of the site. It's a huge, huge area. I was there just a few days ago, and there's plenty of parking. There's plenty of areas where you can maneuver within the site and adjacent to the site if you're going to the south. That should eliminate any problems with congestion or overflow into the right-of-ways. Are there adequate parking areas and off-street truck loading spaces, if applicable, for the anticipated number of occupants, employees, patrons, layout of parking conducive to safe opinion? Just as I went through previously, if you look at the site, you see the orientation that happened. As said earlier, you had parking spaces to the east that have been eliminated, which would be accommodated with parking to the south of the site. And you have two new introduced handicap parking spaces that are on the south of the building that were not there before. And as you can see with the orientation of the lanes, this should prevent any kind of conflict with the right-of-way. As stated earlier, you can look at the site. If you've been there, you know the area is a vast shopping center. It really should not have any indication, any problems with conflict with the right-of-way of Biscayne Boulevard or any other right-of-way, such as that one to the north of the property. Is there suitable landscaping or fencing along the rear lot line adjacent to a residential use or residentially zoned district? As what you saw earlier with the uses that are associated around the property, there are not any residential uses around there. The property right now has landscaping on there. They have introduced some new landscaping where it's conceivably possible to be there on the lot. That has improved it somewhat. It really doesn't require for any buffering from the from residential. You do have that buffering to the Biscayne Boulevard that is on the east side. They have quite a few landscaping attributes in that area that helps shield the parking lot from the right-of-way with that type of use. Is the proposed special exception reasonable in terms of logic, efficient, and economic extension of the public services and facilities such as public water, sewer, police, fire protection, and transportation? So the introduction of this new drive-through will not have any impact on these existing uses. Now, I thought about that. Some could say, well, with the introduction of the new drive-through, would that facilitate any more patrons coming to the area? I would say no, it'd be nominal if anything. You know, the site has been there for many years, so it wouldn't have any impact on these services that we are already providing to the site by introducing this new drive-through lane. Will the proposed special exception constitute an appropriate use in the area and will not substantially injure or detract from the use of the surrounding property or from the character of the neighborhood? We're in a commercial area. We're all familiar with Biscayne Boulevard and the shopping center, so this introduction of this additional drive-through will not have any negative impact on the area that I'm aware of that should happen in a commercial use like this. With that in mind, staff has recommended approval of this adjustment to the site to allow for the additional drive-through. The only condition is that the site plan will require development review, committee approval, and review. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. All right, and I see the applicant, Mr. James.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jason James. I'm with CPH Incorporated. Address is 1992 Southwest 1st Street, Miami, Florida, 33135. So, I guess. if you'd
Anything
like-
to add?
You know what? Derek did a great job. The one thing I do want to add, since, you know, this review, special exception is really focused on drive-through uses. You know, I'm sure many of you on the board have seen how McDonald's has rolled out this dual drive-through lane. And really what they've noticed is that 70% of their business is the drive-through, not people pulling up and parking. And so they figured out their way to make it way more efficient for the customers and the patrons to, you know, get their orders faster, which what it does is reduce the amount of stacking that ends up happening. Another thing that I'm very happy that we're working through with DRC and staff actually is also the connection to Biscayne Boulevard. We do have to seek FDOT's approval, but I think that's important to recognize that we're cleaning up the alignment in the front by doing this work. We're also we're adjusting that driveway. We're cleaning up that alignment so it's safer. So when pedestrians are crossing over, and, you know, internally into our site from the parking, it's going to be a much safer condition, they'll have sufficient time to, instead of having to run across, we think it's gonna be better, cause it's more lined up, and they won't get blindsided by the, floating, light pole that's
Right.
there.
Right.
Which, again, I'm sure we've all seen that floating light pole. So we do appreciate staff's support and also the board's support on the application. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Board discussion? Mr. McDermott?
I think that this really, really is gonna clean up that site. The stacking is gonna be really, I mean, anybody who goes by there, because I went by there the other day and specifically stopped at lunch hour, and it was just amazing how the cars, I mean, it really is gonna create a better flow, and it's gonna create a lot of traffic problems in the end. So, yeah,
I do have a question. So did you say that in the removal of these parking spaces on the east side of the lot, that all of those will be replaced?
So what they have, and this is going to be ironed out through the site plan review process in the DRC, Development Review Committee. So you have that big parking lot there. So what they would do is that parking there, eliminating from the actual site would be accommodated with the site to the south. I had certain comments that I have solicited to the applicant as it relates to that they need to iron out through the DRC. And before we give them approval, they would need to provide me documentation on how they are functioning, such as cross access and things like that.
Okay, great.
But there's plenty of parking in the shopping center.
Yes, plenty.
Yes,
And I was over there, like Mr. McDermott, during the lunch period, and to speak to Mr. James' point, I mean, most people were going through the drive-through, and it was plenty, it was probably
Unfortunate.
just wide open parking there when
Right.
I was there.
yeah. It really, I mean, there's no parking issues there. I'll tell you, that drive-through the way it is scary. It really is. I mean,
It was a real challenge to try to hit many points. So, you know, I think one of the services that we're offering to the patron, the customers, is that bypass escape lane. So
Right.
just in case they get stuck, but then
Right.
by expanding it all the way to that walkway, that covered walkway that's just adjacent to us to the west, we were able to squeeze in that extra space. Not only by removing that curbing, but what McDonald's decided to do is actually chop off that building bump out, what we
Right.
call. So now we're gonna remove square footage from that side of the building to then accommodate a parking space instead, and then we're gonna, you know, take that square footage and add it on the south side of the building.
yeah.
So
No, you guys have done a great job in, you know, working that space, really.
thank you. It was a very tight space.
Yeah.
So-
Madam Chairman, can I make a motion to
Sure.
approve the application?
No other comments?
No,
Okay.
no comments. Nobody.
All right.
Is there a
It's been moved by Mr. McDermott. Any seconds?
I'll second. on a
Seconded by Ms. Arnold. All right. Roll call, please.
Ms. Philippe,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Ms. Arnold,
roll. Yes.
Ms. Joseph,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Motion has passed, 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Appreciate everybody's support.
And that drive-through makes sense over there.
It's like Chick-fil-A. Love it.
Now, I'm not sure about, yeah, shut up, Rosalind.
So, Madam,
Yes.
excuse me, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just as a little more housekeeping, we have prepared the agenda for the year.
Oh,
meeting.
really? Woo-hoo.
Fancy there.
Yeah.
Pass this out. So
Well,
you
all
may
they're gonna
have
do
it.
is give us the dates. They can't tell us the items.
And they can propose the attendance too. As long as we got quorum, we good.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. As long as we have quorum.
I'll pass them down for you.
Thank you.
They gave us a little flow chart.
Oh, yes, I have one for you too, yes, sir. Thank you.
And Ms. Warren?
Derek, this is really nice. Thank you.
Little flow chart.
Wow. Very nice. Thank you, sir.
thank you. I cannot take any responsibility for what someone else did.
It's really nice, thank you.
Cool.
Oh, this is cool.
So, Madam Chair, as Mr. Hill spoke of earlier, we had sent out information in regards to the processing of the board and how did anybody have any questions or concerns about what they had received?
No.
Mr. Hill?
So we're talking about the ethics now.
Mm-hmm.
So, earlier this year, for the prior board, we had given an ethics orientation based upon the handout that was sent to you as part of the agenda package. And some of you have sat through that presentation. So what I just wanted to do was see if there are any questions at this point, and I'm happy to schedule a direct session with any individuals of you, or if needed, we can actually do a full presentation at any point in any of this meeting or future meeting if you find it necessary.
How many new members do we have?
1, 2?
Okay, just two?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we could do a session individually. If we did the two of you together, we would have to notice it as a meeting. So, and so that's not necessarily the best way to do it. So we could either do individual
Individually.
sessions or do it as part of a meeting. If it's always good to have a refresher
Yeah.
on ethics.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, there's just a few important issues that you need to be always
Okay.
cognizant of, and so we can just take a few minutes and discuss those now.
Yeah, sure.
So the first one, and if you have your package, you can follow along. The first one is Sunshine Law, which
Never call me.
basically relates to your conversations with other board members on your own board. And the point is that you should not have those conversations except when you're in a public meeting that has been advertised and there's staff present taking notes. So when you are out socially, when you see people who are on your board just walking to and from meetings, you shouldn't discuss items on the agenda, you know, the weather, restaurants, sports. All of those are safe subjects, but not agenda items, or items that foreseeably could come to the board. So those are off limits. In addition, and sometimes this sort of sneaks up on you, you might have a conversation with a board member next to you about an item during the item or before. That's not permitted either. All conversations need to be public if they're discussing an item that is either on an agenda or foreseeably coming before the board. Okay. The other important, excuse me. The other important issue on communications is if there is contact between you and other individuals, like applicants or citizens. If it's a quasi-judicial item, which is mostly what you do, either applications
That
for
we do.
variances or special exceptions, those communications, either conversations or written documents, are called ex parte, meaning outside the presence of the other party, like the applicant, or outside the presence of the public. It's just, so the concept is you're actually sitting as judges, and in this setting, you're treated as judges, and you shouldn't be talking to a citizen or an applicant outside the presence of others. However, you are allowed to. It's sort of, there was an evolution of a case that said you can't, and then the Florida legislature said you should be able to. So the prevailing rule now is that you can discuss applications outside the presence of the public meeting, not with another board member, but with a citizen or an applicant, if you disclose that at the meeting.
And that includes council members.
Yes. That would be an ex parte communication. So if you receive an email directly to you, my suggestion is you forward it to staff to put in the file. and that satisfies your disclosure requirement. If you have a communication, somebody comes up to you at the supermarket or at a party and says they want to talk to you about an item, you can decline and say you'd prefer not to, and all evidence that's presented to you would be done at the meeting. Or you say, okay, but I'm going to have to disclose it. So, and what you disclose is the name and there's a requirement in the code, name and the substance of the conversation and when it occurred. So it's a common thing that happens, that people make these disclosures, so you shouldn't feel that it's any negative at all. It's just a question of whether you personally want to engage in it. Okay. The other thing to know, since all of your items are quasi-judicial, and this isn't strongly covered in this, but it's something that I've been asked to spend some time on, is the nature of the evidence that's presented to you. And essentially, I think what it boils down to is who can give you an opinion on matters that come before you, and who can really just make statements of fact. So opinions can come, everybody needs to be sworn on a quasi-judicial item, but opinions can come from staff and from experts, like an architect or an engineer, like a traffic engineer, after they're sworn. But citizens really have to just make statements of fact based upon the evidence that they are familiar with. They're called fact-based statements. So a citizen is not really qualified to give an opinion under evidence law. So it's just something you need to be careful of, because your duty as the quasi-judges that you are is to weigh the evidence on an application that comes before you. And sometimes it's a question of credibility, but often it's, who do you believe? And so staff and professionals are presenting evidence to you that you can always accept opinion or fact, but citizens are really just supposed to present fact. Like, if they want to tell you the traffic is bad, I mean, that's sort of like a statement of opinion. But if they know that there's a level of service and they can show you evidence of it based upon some report that has been documented, that's something different. I think those are the three most important things that you really need to be concerned about. There's conflicts of interest. If you own property or if you reside close to an application where that application is, you may have a conflict, and you should discuss it with staff or the city attorney's office before the hearing to make sure you don't have a conflict. The Commission on Ethics, it doesn't take favorably board members who vote on applications on which they have a conflict. Also, gifts, you should be very careful about what you accept. There are very strict gift laws that you should be careful of. And there's a fairly complicated discussion here of conditions that can be imposed on applications. Read it carefully, and then we can have a discussion on it another time. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. Any old business? New business? Well, we took care of new business. All right. Then with that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. See you guys
Awesome.
next
See you next
month. No, but I have to come to you.
We have not seen any items, received any items for, that we will have a November meeting. It doesn't look like we will have a December meeting item.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're,
Something special comes up and we have to make,
so we're not gonna,
So as of now, no November, for now.
for now, no, November, no. Okay.
Okay, good.
All right,